Peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let's talk about the crisis of manhood, how a new book by Republican Josh Hawley has gotten the conversation even more inflamed, talking about what he thinks is traditional masculinity. We're going to start the discussion here, but we're going to continue to have more. So we'll talk about that. Also, it was a violent week in America over the Memorial Day weekend. We'll talk about the mental toll of mass shootings. And then later, we're going to check in with Brother Michael Inhotep to talk about the whole conversation around kink, Halle Bailey, and the Little Mermaid and the impact that race has played on that, and so much more. So stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for being a part of the discussion and joining me this afternoon. Man, oh man, we are live today, folks, and I'm so excited to be joining you this afternoon as we have the conversations about a host of things, from everything from talking about manhood to talking about Little Mermaid and so much more. Folks, we want you to join us in the conversation today. Make sure you do so. Join us on our YouTube chat as we're streaming live there and so much more. But we would love to get what you have to say about these discussions. First and foremost, let's talk about the issue of manhood, or the crisis of manhood, as Josh Hawley, who is a Republican, who has written a new book called Manhood, and how he talks about, quote unquote, traditional masculinity. This has been a big discussion, especially for the American right, where there has been a huge conversation about redefining what it means to be a man in America. Joining me in this discussion is my brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, who's joining us all the time on Mondays here to discuss this very topic. Doc, good afternoon, brother. How are you today?
I'm doing lovely, brother. How are you?
I'm good. Let's talk a little bit about this, because Josh Hawley tried to throw his little 2 cents, or rather his 0.5 cents, into the conversation about what manhood looks like, what does it mean, and all of that good stuff. But there is a larger conversation, and the reason I wanted to discuss this, bro, is because I see this as a very interesting place. This is not just a discussion that white men are having among other white men, especially in the American right, but this is also a discussion that black men are having among other black men, talking about this crisis of manhood. And I want to share with folks what the American Psychological Association put out there as they talk about this issue, because so many people might have a different view. But this is what they put out there. Well, first, before we go to them, let me go to this quote coming from the New York Times talking about Josh Hawley's new book. Take a look at this. Here's the first quote, folks. It says that the release of the Missouri Senator Josh Hawley's new book on manhood is the latest peg for a national conversation about men, but the necessity of such a conversation has been apparent for some time. If there's anything that's well established in American social science, it's that men are falling behind women in higher education, suffer disproportionately from drug overdoses, and are far more likely to commit suicide. Indeed, the very definition of masculinity is up for grabs. And in 2019, the American Psychological Association published guidelines that took direct aim at what it called traditional masculinity, marked by stoicism, competitiveness, dominance, and aggression, declaring it to be, quote, on the whole, harmful. Wow. That's Josh Hawley right there, folks. So what's your take on this, Doc? Is the view that we have of manhood, the discussions around manhood, especially on both the white and among white men and black men, is this completely off the mark here, or what do we need to do? Because there seems to be a lot of mixed messages.
So I think that the conversation about manhood, black men have been having it for a very long time. Whether it was, how to be a better father, how to be, you'd hear it at churches, you'd hear it at masjids, you'd hear it at the Nation of Islam talking about our responsibility as men. The problem that I have with a lot of where those conversations go is that it often comes down to blaming women for making more money, for being more accomplished in education, complaining about society opening things up to women to compete in the labor force. I think that those are the things that are harmful. And certainly anything that can lead to men being more violent, I think is very dangerous. Now, we have the so-called manosphere. I think that's a really dangerous place for Black men and for non-Black men. This idea that women are supposed to lower their standards to make room for you, and making men feel aggrieved and making men feel victimized. That's actually the opposite of even the stoic masculinity that we came to grow up with. I know men who are stoic. I know men who are, but at the same time as being stoic, they're thoughtful, they're caring, they're kind. They are believing that women deserve all of the opportunities that men have. And that's where I fall. I don't have a problem with certain elements of what people are calling traditional. I think that some of that, particularly if you studied what Stoicism actually is and the ancient philosophy that it came from, Stoicism isn't always a bad thing. But the idea that men can't open up things to women, that men blame women. You have this incel movement on the internet blaming women for any missed opportunities at either romance or at educational opportunities or job opportunities. Yeah. That's where I have a problem with it.
Right. And here's the thing that as much as we talk about manhood in this country, Doc, there still seems to be a lot of misinterpretation or things that are up for interpretation. One of the things that it talked about in this op-ed by Mr. David French, I believe it was the simple fact that, that in this conversation about manhood, he pointed out that men shouldn't be trying to look at a situation based on getting respect, but that at the root of manhood, it is purpose. And I thought that was very interesting, that if a man feels like he serves a purpose, whether in his family, in his home, in his community, then he is going to gain the benefits of what he sees as himself as a man. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that 100%. I think chasing purpose is, that's the meaning of life. I would say that's good for men, women, non-binary people. You should chase your purpose. The idea, I think a lot of this comes back to exploitative capitalism. I think a lot of men judge themselves based on how much money they make, and where they are in the labor force and things like that. And sometimes it comes down to subjugating women. I think that is incredibly damaging. And that's what a lot of our young men, Black, white, or whatever, kind of fall victim to. I think we need to teach men to chase their purpose. I think we need to teach men to not only work hard, but to also be humble. There's a level of humility that I think is a part of masculinity. I think about my great-grandfather was the kindest, most gentle man, but he was, by anybody's definition, a man's man.
Right.
So I think that we need to get back to that. If that's what traditional masculinity is, for some, it's believing in a higher power, being humble, being kind, never raising I never heard my great-grandfather raise his voice to his wife,
right,
to his children, none of that.
Right.
If that's what masculinity is, then yes, we need to get back to that. But these ideas that are being put out there, that we judge masculinity based on how much money you make, how many muscles you have, who you can beat up, who you're stronger than. I think that's the problematic thing that we need to go after and eradicate as a society.
Absolutely. James Spitfire, you checked in for the Culture Crew. James, you said, yeah, Black men crisis, stress from job and in unions. Absolutely. Thank you so much, James, for checking in. Trisha, you said lack of purpose, honor, and integrity a disastrous consequences. Absolutely. When we look at this situation in terms of how do we have these conversations, I mean, Josh Hawley is from he's from the American right group. He's a Donald Trumper. He's on that vibe. But when we're talking about what does that mean for black men, you talked about at the beginning of your remarks, there are a number of conversations that we're having, but it still seems to be this phantom that we're chasing, right? Like, look, I grew up around black men, whether it's in the Nation of Islam or in the community. I saw black men and men that I love, respect, men that show strength, they show compassion, they show gentleness to their children and to their wives. I mean, I grew up around this. I saw that. But then there's, some people say, well, if you just have more of those type of men, and I'm wondering, is it really, and I'm speaking of in the black community, is it because we don't have those men there, or is there something else? Because I see brothers, I know good brothers. I mean, of course, we're not all at the top of our games and everything, but there are black men that are working, there are black men that are providing, there are black men that are supporting their families and themselves, there are black men that are engaged in their communities. I'm not coming across a lot of deadbeat dudes. You know what I'm saying, Doc? I'm just not seeing it. So what's missing here?
Well, I think part of it is the circle that you choose to be around. And I think we should isolate ourselves from deadbeat dudes. Or if you see your brother and he's acting a particular way to his woman or to his partner, it could be a man, whatever. But certainly if he's acting that way to his woman or his children, or he's not doing the best he can, yes, there are times you fall on hard times. I think a lot of this, again, is about economics, where we make it like a brother can't, lose a job and maybe he can't make a child support payment. I don't think that makes him a bad brother. I think that makes him a victim of circumstance and a victim of our exploitative capitalist system. But that aside, I think a lot of times we need to look at the one thing we need to broaden is how we understand a man contributing to his family. If a man is there and his wife goes to work and he stays home with the children, that doesn't make him less of a man. That makes him a man who takes care of his children, which is either you do it economically or you do it with love and care and wiping tears and snot off of noses. That's a man's man to me. But we have this idea that men have to participate in the labor force one particular way. We have this idea a lot of times that if you're a young man, that you have to chase after every single woman that comes along. I fell victim to it. I'm not even going front, thinking that that's what gauged my manhood, was how many women liked me, rather than, like somebody said, purpose, integrity, honor. Those are the things that we need. And yes, there are some men who are missing that. There are men who need to recognize that the toughest guy on the block is not the man who's the most manly. You know what I mean? That's going to be the man who's going to be away from his family if he gets locked up. Then what kind of man are you when you're begging your family for commissary? You know what I mean? And for somebody to send you clean draws, rather than actually being there and taking care of your family. And when I say taking care of, that doesn't always mean that you have to be the breadwinner. That just means you have to take care of your family. You know what I mean? And I think whether we're in crisis, I'm a big believer and proponent in black marriage. I believe black men need to get married. And again, I'm not saying you can't marry somebody outside of your race or whatever, or marry a man or whomever. But I do believe we need to promote marriage among black men. Commitment. That's another thing. Being committed to a family, being committed to your community, being committed to your faith if you have one. Those are things that I think make up masculinity. And we need to preach that to young black men and not let the manosphere, get a hold of them and think it's all about how many women you can sleep with.
Absolutely. Doc, I know your time has been very well spent, and I know you got to drop off. So I appreciate your excellence, bro, and your brilliance on this conversation. How can people check you out?
So I'm trying to stay off of Elon's pet project. So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on, Jason Nichols on Facebook or Jason Nichols PhD, either one. You can find me on Blue Sky. I don't know if that's opened up yet. Or, just reach out to me. If you want to send me an email and have a conversation, I'm here for that too. So much love to all my people. And, Farajii, you my man. You can hit me up on the phone. You'll never do that, but you need to give me a call.
Boy, you know what? Okay, that's fine. There's a brother can get put on blast a couple of times. There's no problem with national TV. It's all good. My brother, Dr. Jason Nichols, checking in from always checking in with us on Mondays, especially. He's a guest lecturer. He's a lecturer at the University of Maryland, African American Studies Department, and just a brother who's doing some fantastic work in trying to shape the culture around a number of issues. Doc, thank you so much, brother. It's good to talk to you.
You already know.
All right, bro. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about what happened over Memorial Day weekend. This has been a violent weekend in America where at least 16 people have died from gunfire. I'm going to share with you some of the latest data around the gun violence archives and what they're saying. But let's talk about the mental toll that gun violence has had on us and, of course, on the rest of the country. Stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. I wanted to have a discussion about violence as we have seen another violent weekend in America, Memorial Day weekend, a weekend where we're supposed to give thanks and honor those who have served in our armed forces. And as they have done their work across the seas, we are still, folks, we are still trapped in this space here at home where violence continues to be the number one killer for people across this country. We're seeing gun violence happening in cities across the land. And more importantly, the toll. What is the toll? And I think this is the other part of the discussion that we can kind of dibble and dabble on, but we haven't had a full understanding of it, which is what is this mental toll that we're seeing and that we're all experiencing from gun violence. Now, if you grew up in the Black community, gun violence and the idea of being in a quote-unquote peaceful place can be two different realities. And that's unfortunate, considering the fact that we got more laws, we got more restrictions, and we got all of this more discussion about what needs to be done with guns. The reality is that none of that stuff seems to be impacting, and I'm not going to say it's totally not impacting, but it's not impacting at the level that it needs to make the impact. It's not impacting in terms of to try to disrupt what we're seeing happening in the streets. Let me just share with you where we stand on this issue. Take a look at this information, folks. This is from the Gun Violence Archives, and this is from an article that ABC News put out earlier talking about what happened over this past weekend. Take a look. Here's, as of May 30th, 2023, the Gun Violence Archive has reported 262 mass shootings this year, folks. 262 mass shootings. That means that where 4 or more people have been shot in a single incident. While legislatures continue their ongoing debate on what should be done and what actions need to be taken or where the attention should be shed, victims of gun violence struggle to move forward and often live a new life that they didn't anticipate. And as a society, trauma surgeon Dr. Sakrin, he's from Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, he said people have become somewhat numb to mass shootings and called it a complex public health problem. He said no one person or organization is going to solve this problem. It requires a multidisciplinary approach that cuts across sectors. All right, folks, here's where I wanted to have your vote, your voice as part of this discussion. This is one of our big culture convos for the day. But I want us to look at what is happening in this country. You can see the piece here from ABC News, but I want us to look at what is really happening in this country to the point where we feel like this is the only way to deal with situations. But more importantly, it's not just about where we feel like this is the only way. This seems to be the way. This seems to be the way. 262 mass shootings by the end of May, which is the 5th month of the year. So we're going into the halfway mark of the year. So you could potentially look at, if the trend continues, so think about this, 262 mass shootings. If you continue on this trend, we could be looking at well over 500 mass shootings in the United States of America by the end of the year. 500, and I'm talking about when people are just being shot and killed. I'm talking about large numbers of people. So I want to get your take on this, especially about what Dr. Sakrin, the trauma surgeon, said, talking about people feeling numb to mass shootings. Here's that, and this is part of the mental toll. Do you feel like people are becoming numb to mass shootings? So are we becoming numb to gun violence in this country? I want you to join me in the discussion. Post your comments in our YouTube chat as we're streaming live right there. And of course, we're streaming live on blackstarnetwork.com and of course on Amazon News. But I want to get your take on this, crew. Do you feel numb? And I know it's hard to admit that you could possibly feel numb because this is people's lives. This is a public health problem. This is a humanity problem. This is a gun problem. It's all of those things mixed together. But do you still feel numb? Do you feel like you've just been listening? You hear the talk about violence. You hear the talk about gun restriction and gun and trying to figure out what to do with this problem. But do you still feel numb? You can see the faces of the victims. You can hear the stories from the mothers of Black boys that have suffered from gun violence. But do you still feel numb? Jump in the conversation. I would love to hear what you have to say. All right, let me go to the crew on this. Crew, y'all been checking in, and I appreciate y'all. Let's go to Pauline. Pauline, thank you so much for checking in. You said, truth, they always want to cut the SNAP programs. These people are disgusting. Talking about those who are getting food. And I get that. I definitely understand that. So is that what you're saying, Pauline, when you're talking about poverty? The fact that people are not having the resources that they need, so therefore they subject themselves to being in violent situations or making violent decisions. Very, very possible there is a link between poverty and violence. But the things that we're seeing in a lot of these cases, like I was reading about some stuff that was happening across this country over the weekend. Let me just pull this up. This stuff is not about money. This is about literally two people having an argument and one person saying, you know what, I can't get my point across to this person, therefore I'm going to make a point and start shooting at people. This is the place that we're at. This is a telltale sign. I don't know about y'all, but at least for me, I don't get into a lot of altercations and arguments with people. You got that. You got that. Road rage incidents gets violent nowadays. People are not in their right frame of mind, folks. And this has created a huge mental burden on us and on our everyday lives. That something as simple as bumping into somebody as you're walking down the street could possibly lead to violence. Something as simple as cutting getting in front of somebody. You may not even be cutting them off. You might have used the signal. You had enough space. But guess what? Leads to violence. Something as simple as getting a parking spot. I've seen people. There was this case in Baltimore not too long ago. A man was upset with a whole family for getting a parking space, and he winds up shooting 3 to 4 people in just one single incident because of a parking space. This is not about access to guns. This is not just about the laws. This is about the people, the mental state of people, folks. The mental state. That's what I want us to talk about. Lana, checking in. My sister Lana, good to hear from you. You said the violence is making us dehumanized. And as a gun store owner, I do not support bans on guns. I support background checks. That ban is only for our community. Lana, let me find out you're a gun store owner. I did not know. I hear that. Okay. But you don't support the bans, but you do support the ideas of background checks. Okay. And I'm sure that you support the fact that some of these background checks have to be comprehensive. They have to be extensive. They have to make sure they cover their ground. Okay. I hear you loud and clear, Lana. Thank you, sister. Did not know. All right, Tiana, you checked in and said people are walking around suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and don't know it. Come on now. Living in the ghetto, living in the hood can give you PTSD. Y'all with me on that? Can we say that? Can I say that in the culture? Living in desperate circumstances. Well, and I'm not talking about the ghetto in terms of just black. I'm talking about being poor. And whether you're black, white, Asian, Latino, Native American, if you are in a poor, poverty-stricken, low-income space all the time, that can wear on you. Absolutely. Truth is power, my guy. You saying the reason why we as black people have not noticed the gun violence is because we're always the one that the violence is inflicted on. Top that through racism, through Karen, we're numb. That's not good. Yep, that's not good at all, bro. That is not good at all. And you're right. The violence has become it's so much violence that I think, here's the thing, folks, I think it is a defense mechanism for us to become numb of what's going on, because if we start to really take in the energy of death, the energy of loss, the energy of violence, the energy of pain, oh my gosh, could you imagine? Some of us probably wouldn't be able to get out of bed in the next day. I'm being very serious, because that's a lot. On top of what you said, truth is power, on top of the racism, the sexism, on top of the harassment by police, on top of the poverty, the economics, whether you even make it in the middle class, just the ongoing, all of those things play a huge role in the discussion around violence. All right, let's go back to what you're saying, crew. Let's talk to me. Ramona, you checked in. You said numbness or normal trauma, where gun violence has become norm in some communities or cities, which also see the deterioration of humanity in real time. Whew. Numbness or normal trauma. I don't know, and that's like an oxymoron, that trauma should not be normalized, but unfortunately, and I understand exactly what you're saying on this, Ramona, trauma is normalized in our community, and can we say in this country, trauma is normalized. If you have not been exposed to trauma, you're looked at like a unicorn. Can the church and the crew say amen? I'm telling y'all, if you have not experienced, you ever come across somebody that didn't go through some disadvantaged circumstances, somebody that grew up in a decent home, they had, even if they may have not have had their parents in the household, they went to a good school, they were afforded certain opportunities. You look at them like they're crazy. I know. See, that's part of the culture. That's part of the culture. The part of the culture, we look down upon those who did not experience some of the most life-altering, life-changing circumstances. We look down upon them. We even make fun of them. I remember growing up when I was a little boy, I lived in a middle-class neighborhood. I had a backyard. Sometimes I got made fun of a little bit because people's like, man, you don't have this in your neighborhood. You don't have that in your neighborhood. Like, no, I don't. I don't have drugs. I don't have prostitution. I don't have trash on the ground. But then I was made to feel like I was not, that I was outside of the norm, that I was outside of the Black experience. And that's a part of the culture I think we need to really take a look at. We're going to take one more before we take our next pause. Janelle, you checked it, my sister. You said people aren't numb, but those we elected to make change act like they're numb. Facts. Love it. Janelle, you said politicians won't even fund their canned responses to the stressors that cause the violence. Ooh. Now, look, when we come forward, I want us to continue to have this conversation. But here's another part of it. If we talk about the mental toll of violence, can we talk about the fact that we are living in a culture of violence and that this violent, the gunfire, the gun violence that we're seeing in this country, none of that is going to change unless we change the culture of this country. And that is the real, that's when it gets back right to America. You talk about you really want to see gunfire, violence go down, you want to stop people killing people. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it. But do you have the will to do it? Look, we're going to continue the conversation on the other side, so stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape. With me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Farajii Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I've been talking with you about this violent weekend we have experienced over the weekend, Memorial Day weekend, where we saw a number of people getting shot and unfortunately have lost their life over the weekend. At least 16 people have been killed over the weekend across this country. But there have been a number, and I'm talking about dozens, folks, and crew. One of you, let me see who talked about this yesterday. Oh, my sister Corinna Corinna, you checked in and talked about the Hollywood Beach shooting that just happened yesterday, over the weekend, and talking about how there were a number of people there. And unfortunately, I think that and Corinna checked me on this, I think the death toll of that shooting, unfortunately, was up to 9 people. Or there were at least 9 people shot. We're going to get more information about that. But we're seeing this across the country. In Baltimore, they had a shooting, my hometown. I was reading in other parts of the city. I think in Chicago, there was a major shooting that happened over the weekend. I saw some crazy numbers that at least 47 people were shot and killed, were shot at. They were injured from shootings. I mean, the numbers are getting crazy. And here's the thing, in terms of my understanding and my relationship with gun violence. If you're from Baltimore, if you lived in Baltimore, if you're still in Baltimore, unfortunately, the talk of gun violence is so prevalent in every single conversation. Every single conversation. And I will have to say, folks, it plays on you. When every time you open up the newspaper, you turn on the news, the constant talk, homicides, gun violence, death, who got shot today. This is the talk among black folks with other black folks. This is the talk with black folks and white people. This is the talk with constituent to political leadership. The talk is constantly who got shot, or what we're going to do about the gun violence, who's going to stop the killing. Now, there are things that are happening in cities across this country that are trying to disrupt this constant chatter. But look, let me just keep it real, folks, and I want to get your take on this, crew. So post your comments in our YouTube chat. But let's keep it real. I feel like we're like a mouse running a race and going nowhere. Here's why. You can't talk about gun violence. You can't talk about stopping the violence. You can't talk about America being a peaceful country if the culture itself is violent. The culture of leadership, violent. One of my favorite shows that just ended, y'all know the show I'm talking about. It came on HBO, ended on Sunday night, called Succession. And when you look at the show Succession and it breaks down how corporate America and media, that level of violence on the mind, the media's level of violence on business interests, that level of violence on the view that people have about themselves and their country, I mean, that's violent. When we talk about systemic violence, right, we're not talking about somebody coming up to you with a weapon, but the weapon of holding you back from opportunity is a form of violence. Somebody talking to you about you can't do something because of your gender or your race, or because, you live in a certain area code, so you shouldn't be afforded these opportunities. That's a form of violence because those are acts that violate the sanity, the peace, the humanity of all of us, right? So when those things are done, you don't walk away from those experiences feeling whole. You feel violated. Because why? It's violent. It's a form of structural violence. It's a form of cultural violence. So when we talk about all of these violence, it's not like just talking about putting the guns down and trying to do providing some mental health services, folks. We also are talking about, well, look at what's coming out of Hollywood. You know what I mean? Is that a culture of violence that we really need to look at? The doctor that we quoted earlier, the trauma surgeon from Johns Hopkins, Dr. Sankran, he said, no one person or organization is going to solve this problem. It requires a multidisciplinary approach that cuts across sectors. So we can't say, let's stop the gun violence and then not put the National Rifle Association, the NRA, or not put some sort of accountability on the gun makers, right? We can't say, well, we want to stop the violence, but then when we look at the policies coming from Washington or from state capitals or from city halls, it's not a form of violation of somebody. We can't say let's stop the violence if the multidisciplinary approach that Dr. Sankaran is proposing does not include the films, the content, the media that we consume, whether it's coming from Hollywood, whether it's coming from YouTube, whether it's coming from World Star. We love to eat violence. We love to go to sleep to violence. Right? I mean, let's keep it right. So when the doc said multidisciplinary approach, to me, that sounded like there needs to be an all hands on deck approach to understanding that these things, as much you can put guns away, but does that stop a person from being violent or having violent tendencies? All right, let's go back to you, crew. I want to talk to you. Let's go. Let's go. People are checking in. I love it. I love it. I love it. Davey, you checked in and said America won't solve its gun problem at home unless they deal with military and police budgets, form of violence. Instead of buying guns, we need to spend money on the citizens. Martin Luther King told us this, and folks just don't get it. Davey, I'm with you 1,000%. That's a violent act. You put more money in, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't be supported, but there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance. Lana said, bingo, come on, Farajii, the fires emojis. I'm just talking the truth. I mean, let's keep it real. Let's keep it real. That's how deep the situation goes, because it's not just like, oh, we're going to stop guns from getting into certain people's hands. I mean, that works. That's cool. But at the end of the day, we still, I'm talking about those of us who know better, who've been exposed to certain truths, those of us who want to be better human beings, we still got violent tendencies. We still think about, I wish the mother would. Come on. Truth is power. You said I use reading my Bible and going to church as an outlet. I go to self-defense and martial arts as an outlet. I read books for an outlet. I'm aware, but I'm not numb. Facts. Love it. Love it. Official Sanika, and to Truth is Power point, that might be where another part of this process is how do you teach people to channel their violent tendencies or their anger in a more productive way? How do you do that? That's one of the big conversations. Official Sanika, you checked in and said something radical and transformative have to happen. Right. Radical and transformative. Bold. It can't be tepid. It can't be timid. It can't be slow. It can't be, it's coming. It has to be something radical and transformative. And there are models out there, folks. There are community-based models. There are local and state models. There are national models. There have been some things established in this country, because I want us to walk away from this conversation at least having a better view or feeling hopeful. There are models out there. I remember reading at one point that former gang leaders in Los Angeles, here in the city of Los Angeles, decided to turn their lives around. They did their time in prison. They came out and decided to work with current gang members and help them to provide opportunities and resources and to broker peace between gangs, right? That's a way that you can look at some things locally. This thing is not going to happen overnight without real citizens, without citizens that care, that are no longer numb, but care, those who feel the pain, those who can see the deterioration of humanity, not just of buildings. But it's going to require that level of engagement. Official Sanika, thank you so much. Corinna, you said 9 injuries in talking about Hollywood Beach, 9 injuries, including 4 minors. Youngest victim is 16 months old. To date, only injuries, no death. That's a blessing. It's only injuries. But I appreciate you for bringing that up. 16-month-old. And that's the place that it's getting. It's gotten, remember back in the day in this country, violence would happen at night, or violence would happen if you shoot a child, you shoot a woman. You know what I mean? That would be like you crossing the line. There are no rules anymore, folks. That's the part of the culture. There are no rules in this process. There's no like, oh, okay, you can't shoot older people. You can't shoot women. There's no children allowed. No. It's anytime, anywhere, anybody can get it. Okay. Let's take one more, And a couple more, and then we're going to take our next pause. Here's Republican. You said we need people in the government like Marcus Garvey. Well, can I make a point, Republican? Marcus Garvey wouldn't even run in this type of government. He wouldn't even run. He wouldn't want to be affiliated or put himself in a system like this. He would tell the people, come out of the system. That's what he would do. He wouldn't say, come into the system. He said, come on out of the system. He came to give the people a different vision. He told us, look, our real salvation, our real redemption is going back to the motherland. He didn't even want to be a part of this system. So that's where we are with this whole process. He didn't even want to be a part of this system. So no, we wouldn't be voting for Marcus Garvey because Marcus Garvey wouldn't be on the ballot. Stride Iron Style, Republican, thank you so much for bringing that up. Stride Iron Style, I think I'm saying Stride Iron Style. I'm making sure I want to get that name correctly. That bigotry has led to the violence we are seeing today. Yes, absolutely. But the bigotry is rooted in some level of bias, right? The bigotry is rooted in some unhealthy teaching about another group of people that a lot of times we were exposed to when we were very young, and then we just never disrupted. When we're talking about that implicit bias, how did that implicit bias start? It started with somebody dropping a seed on our minds about a view that they had about somebody, right? The implicit bias has gone so far, it's taken root and has germinated into our own thinking because it was something that was deposited in us when we were either young, when we were naive, when we were not knowledgeable, and that became a point of reference. It's something, and we see this happening. You have children both in black and white households that have a view of black and white people. But where did they get that view? Their first view came from the parents. That was the root of their politics, right? And then as you grow up, you start to get all these different experiences, and then you think to yourself, like, wait a minute, what my parents say is not congruent or consistent with what I'm seeing in reality. And then that's where the challenge starts to come. That's when the friction starts to come. That's when the hard family discussions at the dinner table about the world starts to happen, because you're seeing one thing, your parents has told you another thing about the world, and you're like, that doesn't fit. And then you got to figure out where you stand. So not only have you been exposed to all of these different perspectives, now you got to make the big choice of trying to figure out where you stand. But that's all rooted somewhere. That came from somebody. And if we're talking about this gun violence in this country, somewhere along the line, folks, we have been lied to about who is the problem or what is the problem. Something has to be disrupted. Something has to be uprooted at this point. Look, I got to take a quick pause. Look, we know that this discussion is not over by any stretch of imagination, but we do know that there is a mental toll. We can break through the mental toll if we decide to do something different and have different conversations. And I implore us to have different conversations on this show as we look at this situation, especially as it impacts Black people in this country. Look, I got to take another pause. When we come forward, let's continue the conversation on the other side. I want to get your take as we're going to be checking in with my brother Michael and Hotep. As we talk about the violence and the guns, let's talk about when you remove certain history or certain type of literature from the schools. Can that be a form of violence? Yes, you can. If you do not teach people the truth of a circumstance, you are committing a form of violence against their own being, folks. You are holding them back from being a full human person because you did not expose them to the truth when you know better. We're going to talk about what's happening with poet laureate Amanda Gorman and how one of her most famous poems has been banned in Florida. Are you really surprised? We'll talk about that with Brother Michael and Hotep. And, of course, in the next hour, we'll talk about the Little Mermaid. Stay with us. It's all happening here on the second half of the culture here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All
momentum we have now. We have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? We talk.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation, you and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the great state of Florida. And tomorrow, let me just say this, man, Florida's going through some real changes. Tomorrow, I'm going to be checking in with my sister, God willing, Suzette Speaks, because we got to talk about what happened last week with this Ron DeSantis situation that just went crazy, just went terrible. And his campaign announcement for president, and more importantly, like what the state of Florida is doing in preparing for all of the craziness that's happening down there. But one of the things that we have been vigilant upon is, and still keeping the conversation going on about, is the issue of banning books and banning literature and other literary pieces that would help to empower students, particularly Black and brown students in the state of Florida. And this next story falls right in line with it. And it's such a sad state of affairs, folks. It really is. And I want y'all to think with me on this. It's a sad state of affairs that we can't even read certain things, or our children shouldn't be exposed to certain things. See, this is the violence, folks. This is the violence that your child cannot be exposed to a certain level of history. They can't be exposed to a certain level of philosophical thought. They can't be exposed to a poem. A poem. This is the case with the situation surrounding Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman. Y'all know Sister Amanda. Amanda is that dynamic sister who gave that fantastic poem, The Hill We Climb, when she read that during President Biden's inauguration. She made history. It was a major historical moment. Beautiful young sister. She's actually from Los Angeles. And she has been writing poetry, putting out books and content, and letting people know. She's the first National Youth Poet Laureate. And she has been breaking through a whole bunch of obstacles and barriers. There she is right there. That was on Inauguration Day. Tore the house down, right? But this poem, The Hill We Climb, becomes a problem for one parent. One parent. I want y'all to listen to me, crew. One parent decided that this poem was not appropriate for her children and other children to read, that she filed a complaint about it to get it totally removed. As she said, she wanted to make sure that that piece was not available and would be removed from the total environment of the school that her children went through. One parent. Now, when we say that we don't have a voice, or some of us may think we don't have a voice, I want you to keep this story in mind, because this was one parent. And guess what happened, folks? There were some changes that the school made because of one parent's disdain with how this poem would affect her children. Let me go into it. Then I got my brother Michael in Hotep. This is coming up from NBC. Take a look. Miami-Dade County Public Schools moved the hill we climb to the middle school section of the library after a parent, meaning one, folks, filed a formal objection to the work, according to documents obtained by the Florida Freedom to Read Project and shared with media. In a statement, the district said no literature had been banned or removed. This is the play on words. They didn't ban it. They didn't remove it. It was determined at the school that the hill we climb is better suited for middle school students, and it was shelved in the middle school section of the media center. The book remains available in the media center, according to the statement. In the form regarding the hill I climb, the parent wrote that it was, quote, not educational and contains indirect hate messages. Come on. The committee found Gorman's book has educational value according to the documents, but it was moved because its vocabulary was, quote, determined to be of value for middle school students. A review of 5 titles available at the library at Bob Graham Education Center in Miami Lakes was triggered after a parent of 2 students filled out forms requesting the titles be removed from the total environment. One parent said that it wasn't educational. This is violence, folks. This is the slippery slope that we are in this country right now. Because some of these parents don't know a damn thing about history. They don't know nothing about literature. They don't know, they haven't read any books. But they say, oh, we heard a message and it seems like it contains indirect hate messages. Now you can't even say certain things in a poem. Let me bring my brother Michael and Hotep in from the African History Network. And Brother Michael, it's good to see you again. Brother,
hey,
I'm still stuck on this. I'm still stuck on the fact that this got to the middle school section. Now, some people will say, well, that's not being banned or removed. It's not being banned or removed, but it's put into a section that you kind of already got the impression that you shouldn't be reading those books.
Right.
It was a political move, right?
Right. Well, it's the whole book banning measure is a political move, and this whole book banning measure has come out of this whole fake critical race theory attack coming from the right wing that actually emanated out of anti-COVID-19 restrictions, especially taking place in school, having to wear masks, having a social distance, school shutdowns, things of this nature. And what the right wing has done, what a lot of these right wing parent organizations have done, is they've galvanized the anger that a lot of parents had when it came to COVID restrictions. And now they're using these anti-critical, now they're using the critical race theory fake attack to galvanize support, galvanize people together. And then that next step is banning books. And 50% or more of the books that are being banned are books by non-white authors, books dealing with the civil rights movement, slavery, LGBTQ issues, things of this nature. In this specific incident here in Florida, the parent's name is Daily Salinas, Salinas, and is one parent, and she could be Hispanic, it's one parent, but when you read the reporting from AtlantaBlackStar.com, they go further than the article from NBC News. AtlantaBlackStar.com says the parent has admitted that she never read the poem or never heard the poem by Amanda Gorman. Okay. And she, page 2 of the article, she also admitted that she hasn't even read the poem by Gorman that she wanted to be banned from her children's school, and blamed English not being her first language for her protest. I think you may hear some more coming from this, okay? Because now it's alleged that she's a Proud Boy supporter as well, things of this nature. But she says to the effect that she claimed that she is not a member of Moms for Liberty or the Proud Boys and was only attending some of the same events, things of this nature. But here's the worst part of this. It was Governor Ron DeSantis, who actually signed the legislation, whatever it was, to ban the book. Ron DeSantis agreed with this. And what Ron DeSantis is doing is inflicting cruelty among African Americans, inflicting cruelty among migrants coming to this country, inflicting cruelty among people who side with Disney or things like this. He's using this to launch his 2024 presidential campaign and to try to out-Trump Trump. This is what.
Let me stop you right there. That's a good point. Let me stop you right there because we got to take a double pause. But when we come forward, I want you to continue your train of thought, Brother Michael, on this, because this is the other part of the conversation. This is the slippery slope. That if you got one parent, if you got one group that's dictating the agenda, especially someone who hasn't even read, who's not a literate person, but they're dictating the agenda. See, that requires us to have a certain type of approach to this matter, because we're seeing this day in and day out. If a person, for her to even say she never read the poem, but you want it to be banned, come on, folks. And look at what the Miami-Dade County schools, I don't know who's dumber. Is it the woman or is it the school system that say, I think we should make some. Look, we got to take a quick pause, crew. I want to hear what you got to say as we chat with Big Brother Michael and Hotep from the African History Network. And I want to hear from you. Join us in the conversation. Post your thoughts on YouTube as we're streaming live there, as well as on Black Star Network and, of course, on Amazon News. So stay with us. More conversation about this here on the other side, right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black
own media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been checking in and talking to Brother Michael Imhotep from the African History Network as we talk about the situation down in Florida as Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman, her poem, The Hill I Climb, has been, I would say, relocated to a middle school section per the filing of a complaint from one parent about the indirect hate messages coming from the poem. And this is happening within the Miami-Dade school system. And folks, it is another example of what we're looking at, what we're facing in this country. I'm going to bring my brother Michael back into the frame on this. Brother Michael, you were talking about that, like Governor Ron DeSantis, he made his campaign statement last week, but that he's really behind all of this. How does this translate from your vantage point, Brother Michael, when we look at this level of attack on history, on literature, on truth? How does this play out? Is for the state of Florida and for Black folks in this country?
Well, this isn't, I'm not saying Ron DeSantis is behind this. He didn't start this anti-critical race theory movement. What he's doing is capitalizing on it. And he is using this to gain support. He used it to gain support to win re-election as governor in the 2022 midterm elections. He's using it to gain support to run for president, and he's trying to win the presidency. So what this comes out of white supremacy, and this comes out of a fear of the browning of America. Ron DeSantis is a grifter, like Trump as well, and they want to use inflicting cruelty among non-white people, especially African Americans, to gain support from white people who are in fear. You have a lot of white people in fear of becoming a minority in this country. They sit up and watch Fox News all day, and they are fed images of crime and things of this nature, right? So they respond accordingly. And so Ron DeSantis signed this anti-woke bill, and he says that Florida is where woke goes to die. Now, these people can't explain to you what woke is, but what they're referring to, basically the concept of woke started in the African-American community, and it dealt with having a consciousness, being socially aware of social issues, aware of police brutality, aware of discrimination or racism, things like this, and taking action against that, okay? Being socially conscious. Now, the reason why Ron DeSantis and other people like him are against people being woke is because they want them to stay asleep. They don't want them to be awake. They don't want them to be conscious, because you can't deceive a people who are awake, who are conscious, who understand what it is that you're doing. So that's why they want to keep people asleep. That's why they want to ban books. This is why he wants to block the advanced placement African-American studies course, because it will illuminate a lot of minds. It will expose a lot of people, not just African Americans, but non-African American people, to a lot of history that they have never been exposed to in this country, and the contributions that African people have not made just to America, but to the world. When you go study that 240 plus page curriculum coming from the advanced placement people, okay? So this is what we are dealing with now. In 2018, when he first ran against Andrew Gillum, okay, former Mayor Tallahassee, African American Andrew Gillum, and you had some simple Simon ass Black people in Florida, and they were posting on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network, saying they weren't going to vote for Andrew Gillum because Andrew Gillum did not have a Black agenda. I told them Ron DeSantis has a Black agenda. He has an anti-Black agenda. And an anti-black agenda is worse than not having a black agenda. And there was the debate that they had between Andrew Gillum and Ron DeSantis. And Andrew Gillum said, I'm not saying Mr. DeSantis is a racist. I'm saying the racists believe he's a racist. Andrew Gillum was correct.
I'm not saying he's a racist, but the racists believe he's a racist.
Absolutely.
That's some double talk for you.
Absolutely. And then you look at the police force, that task force that Ron DeSantis put together to go after people who he claimed were committing voter fraud. And he sent them to go arrest many of those people were African Americans. They voted. They got the voter registration card in the mail from the Florida state secretary of office, things like this. And then most of those cases were thrown out because they were trumped up charges. They were given their voter registration card. They what happened was these were ex-felons who served their time in prison, right? And then they had their voting rights restored. And Ron DeSantis is against those people having their voting rights restored. You go back to 2018 when I think it was 2018 when Desmond Meade and others and Roland Martin has interviewed Desmond Meade a number of times on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Desmond Meade is a ex-felon. He served his debt to society, and he was one of the ones leading this campaign to put on the ballot in Florida to restore the voting rights of ex-offenders. Okay, because in Florida was one of four remaining states where if you were a felon, you lost your right to vote for life. Okay, and this was dealing with felony disenfranchisement. All right, well, it got something like 66% of the vote. It got overwhelming support from white people and African Americans. So then the Republican-dominated Florida state legislature then passed an addendum to that stated that you had to pay all your fees and restitution and things like this before you can have your voting rights restored. That's not what the bill stated originally, because they want to keep ex-felons, especially African Americans, from voting, okay? Because they know we will vote these Republicans out of office. So this deals with understanding power. This is more than just a vote. We have to understand that politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. You don't vote for exercise. You stop telling African Americans to exercise the right to vote. You vote for power. And these Republicans understood that if you gave these ex-offenders, many of them African Americans, the ability to vote again, they will vote these Republicans out of office and clean house. Okay.
Let me stop you right there.
Okay.
Let's stop you right there. We got to take another pause. When we come forward, let's continue the conversation, Brother Michael, about this. Yes. Because there's another element of this conversation I think that needs to be said. Because just like the gun violence issue that we're seeing in this country, you can't talk about book banning. You can't talk about history in a singular, isolated situation. Mm-hmm. There is a culture in this country where we do not, and I'm going to say this, we do not appreciate, we do not see the value of history, whether it's the history of this country or the history of the people in this country. We do not appreciate history. Because why? History will force us to confront ourselves. And I need to talk to you about that, brother. Folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, I want to have that conversation, of course, with Brother Michael and, of course, with you. Join us in the discussion as we're streaming on YouTube right now. And stay tuned. You're tuned into The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking about the situation down in Florida with National Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman had one of her poems, The Hill I Climbed, to be banned or at least relocated, according to the direction of the Miami-Dade County Public School System, at the request of a parent who did not read the poem but felt like the poem may have contained some indirect hate messages because it simply was given and written and spoken by a young black woman. Yeah, the parent is not too smart. The parent has gone on record to say she's never even read the poem, The Hill I Climbed. Nor is she concerned about reading it, but she has made it her point to try to get it removed from the quote-unquote total environment of the school. Now we're looking at the implications of this. And folks, I want to get to your take on this piece as we check in with Brother Michael Imhotep of the African History Network podcast show. The fact that we're in this country, Brother Michael, you are a historian, you're a researcher. We don't appreciate history in this country. We act like we do. We bring history out of our asses during certain holidays, but we don't use history as the measurement of our activity. We don't use history as the standard of our actions. We don't use history to empower us and to help us to prevent any pitfalls that we make going forward. Like, right. We don't use history. We just we bring it up out our asses. We say, oh, this day on this time, we blah, blah, blah. But we don't use history as a way for us to move this country forward. And that's why I see this case and these other incidents of people pushing back on Black history, any type of acknowledgement of any other group of people's history in this country. The reason why this country is not making the type of progress is because we don't want to confront what has already happened. We hate the past. We want everybody to keep looking forward. It's like, No fire here. No, nothing to see here, folks. Just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. But the fire of us not knowing our history is raging right behind us, and it's moving fast, Brother Michael.
Well, Americans are very ignorant of history, regardless of race. Number one, there was a article from January 19th, 2021, the day before the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. There was an article from CBSNews.com that dealt with how many Americans are ignorant of the U.S. Constitution and also ignorant of history as well. So this deals with the education system, but something else that's extremely important here is that if the real history of this country were taught, then you would understand the relationship between history and politics. Okay, because your understanding of politics is directly related to your understanding of history. And once you have a people who are educated in understanding history, economics, law, and politics, then they can take over. So it's in some people's best interest to keep people ignorant so they can manipulate them. This is why Donald Trump appeals to so many ignorant white people, or ignorant people in general, but most of them are white. This is why, because they could be manipulated. When you had the domestic terrorists that he sent to the U.S. Capitol building January 6, 2021, many of them said, we're invited here by the president of the United States. Well, the U.S. Capitol building is not his house. He can't invite you to the U.S. Capitol building. You left his house. His house was the White House. The U.S. Capitol building is under control of the legislative branch of the federal government, the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. There are three co-equal branches of government. The executive branch is the president, the legislative branch, U.S. House and U.S. Senate, and then the judicial branch, which are the courts. If you actually understood that he didn't have the authority to invite you there, if you actually understood the Constitution and understood that the Vice President Mike Pence had no authority to throw out certified electoral college votes because his presence there is just performative, then you wouldn't be sitting in prison right now, Enrique Tarrio. You wouldn't be just sentenced to 18 years in prison. Okay, Stuart Rhodes, the founder of the Oath Keepers. Okay, so when you're ignorant, you can be manipulated. And so it's in the best interest of some people to keep people ignorant. We have to have enough sense to understand that the people's history and culture, people use their history and culture to so they can learn and benefit from the past and the lessons from the past, as well as the successes and the failures of the past to meet the needs of the community today. Okay, we learn from those successes and mistakes to address the conditions today and for the future. In our history and culture gives us our foundation. It gives us our values, our interests, and our principles. This influences our economic empowerment and political empowerment. This impacts our self-esteem, our self-development, and self-worth. So once we realize this, then we can understand why there's such an effort to keep this history from being taught. Okay. And the history of African Americans has to be taught in every school across the country, not just in schools where we are, because the way you treat a people is largely based upon what you've been taught about a people. What you've been taught about a people is based upon what you've read, heard, and seen about a people. So when we try to get our issues addressed, when we try to get structural inequities addressed and reparations, things like this, if you are dealing with people who are ignorant of your history, who have to vote to pass these bills, then you have a very hard road to hoe. You have a very hard hill to climb. And this is largely what we're dealing with in many of the, especially in the U.S. House of Representatives, where the crazies are. Okay, you're dealing with people who largely don't even understand our history, and a lot of them don't even care about it. I'm talking about the Republicans. Okay, so this is why this is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me get a couple of our crude thoughts in on this conversation, Brother Michael. Then we're going to take another pause. But Pam G, you checked in and said, Norma Hamilton, we need to stop talking about going back to Africa as our default narrative. As Amanda Gorman said in her poem, we will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidations. Absolutely. Absolutely. Republican, you checked in. Thank you so much, Pam. Republican, you checked in and said it's going to be some of the future politicians who's going to use history and Black history to move this country forward. It's not going to be perfect, but a little better than how things are now. I get it. I totally get it. But trust and believe. And my sister Corinna checked in and said, Farajii, I think you need to define what you mean, define the we in this context of this conversation. I'm going to say the we is American people, the American citizen, Black, white, Asian, Latinos. There are certainly a small number of us, I think it's small, and I could be wrong, but there are certainly a number of us who do appreciate history, who look back to it, who try to glean from it and to get guidance from it. But you're talking about the vast number of American people. When you start talking about history, hell, people don't even know how many people are in Congress, or who's the governor of your state. You know what I'm saying? Like, let alone talking about.
There are two U.S. senators and members of the U.S. House of Representatives. Actually, the article from CBS News that I referenced earlier, it deals with this, and it has a segment in there from CBS Morning Show where a reporter goes out on the street and just asks people basic questions.
Come on, bro.
How many members are there in the U.S. House of Representatives? You know, name the 3 branches of the federal government. Okay, there was a study from a few years ago that showed that almost 2/3 of Americans could not name the 3 branches of the federal government. 20% cannot name 1 branch of the federal government, things of this nature. So, and then when we deal with trying to understand the history of slavery, most Americans are ignorant of the history of slavery. This is why we have to, when it comes to Juneteenth being a federal holiday, we have to be very careful. We have to correct the history of Juneteenth and protect the history of Juneteenth. 1, protect it from being pimped by white corporations. 2, correct the history, because it was not the last day of slavery. It was not the day that all the 250,000 African slaves in Texas got the news that they were free. It took Major General Gordon Granger and his 2,000 Union troops, most of them African Americans, almost a year to go through the state of Texas, which is a huge state, to go through the state of Texas and physically take back control and to deliver General Order Number 3. That all did not happen on one day. June 19th is the date that was agreed to celebrate what happened. But that did not all happen on June 19th.
That's a great point.
And then you had some white slave owners who kept their slaves, kept those Africans enslaved for another year, who either kept the information from them or by force just kept them enslaved to get another year's worth of work out of them. So that's not the last day of slavery in this country.
That's a great point. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, I want to switch gears a little bit because, Brother Michael, I want to get your take on this phenomenon called Little Mermaid. I'm going to share with you some of the things you shared with me. I'm going to share with folks what the New York Times columnist Wesley Scott put out there that got people angry that this brother for writing what he wrote. And, of course, get your take on it as well, Cruz. So stay with us. A conversation about the Little Mermaid is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been checking in with my brother Michael in Hotep. And as we talk about what's happening with Amanda Gorman and her poem, and you know, she has put it out there that she's going to make sure that she is also a part of the group of folks that are fighting back against this level of banning or relocating or removal of certain things. We have to also keep in mind that, again, we got to look back at the culture, folks. So if the culture doesn't speak to this level of urgency, then guess what's going to happen? We, the people, aren't going to feel like this is an urgent matter. Now, the thing that we are urgent about is arts and entertainment. And this weekend showed that as The Little Mermaid came out, the major movie that was put out by Disney, where our little sister Halle Bailey served as the main character. She played Ariel in the remake as the live action version of the story, The Little Mermaid. How that movie has created a firestorm of controversy, from everything from dealing with race issues to what one writer saying that this movie didn't have enough kink, K-I-N-K, kink in it, to make it a fun and enjoyable experience. And we'll share with you a little bit more about that one. But The Little Mermaid has really started the conversation about what inspires women. And I think that's a part of the discussion I want to have at another time. But looking at the race issue of how race has played a huge role in Disney making this determination, and how it has generated millions of dollars at the box office. Brother Michael, you wanted to talk about this, brother, and I was a little surprised that you wanted to bring this up. When I saw you said, Farajii, can we talk about The Little Mermaid? And I was like, sure, let's talk about it. Major movie, did crazy numbers over the weekend. It dropped on Friday. The numbers have shown that it's made over $110 million at the box office. It took $250 million to make. So they are still projecting that that this is going to be a film that's going to be able to pay back on its production costs. But the big point about this film is the cultural significance of it. A Black woman playing this character that was originally put out as a white woman. But more importantly, all the other elements. First and foremost, I don't know if you've seen the movie. I went to see the movie with my daughter. She loves mermaids. So I had to go see it.
No, I haven't seen it, and I probably won't see it.
You won't see it?
No, I probably won't see the movie, man. So here are a few things that I wanted to talk about. One, back in October, we talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered, and Dr. Greg Carr was on the panel with me, and Reese Colbert. And we talked about the racist backlash that Halle Bailey was receiving by a lot of white supremacists who didn't like the fact that they had an African-American woman cast. Okay. So we dealt with that aspect, number one, and so we have to understand that I'm not a fan of the movie. And one of the reasons why I'm not a fan of the movie, because for my understanding, the love interest of The Little Mermaid is a white boy, right? A white man, right? Am I correct? Yeah. See, now that's indicative of Disney movies. And this is what I sent you the video of my analysis of The Princess and the Frog. Did you watch that video?
I haven't watched that video just yet.
Okay. So
about The Princess and the Frog. And it's funny because they're actually talking about possibly putting that out as a live action film as well.
See, here's the problem with Disney. Disney does not have a problem depicting having African-American women as princesses. Okay, The Princess and the Frog, Princess Tiana, it was animated. This is the first African-American female princess. When I heard Disney was going to do this, Disney has a history of racism, a long history going back to the 30s, 40s, things like this, of racism. Okay, yeah, they make some good movies. But when I first heard that they were going to have an African-American princess, I said, uh-oh. I said, watch for the hook. Sure enough, with The Princess and the Frog, the hook was two hooks. One, the love interest, Prince Naveen, is not African-American. He's not of African descent. He's this Eurasian, this white-looking Eurasian, Arab-looking, whatever he is. And this is going to be her savior. Her adversary, the enemy in the movie, was the voodoo priest, the black man.
Right.
In The Princess and the Frog.
Right.
Now, very quickly, brother, the movie The Princess and the Frog takes place in New Orleans. Okay. New Orleans is part of Louisiana. Louisiana becomes a part of the Union, part of the United States, because of what's known as the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. Louisiana Purchase, the U.S. gets 820,000 square miles of land for about 3 cents an acre from France for $15 million. Napoleon Bonaparte in France. Why is France trying to sell all the land that they have here in what's known as the United States? Because they were partly, one of the reasons why is because they were fighting a war against these Africans in their colony called Saint Dominique. The Africans call it Haiti or Haiti. And the French were getting their asses kicked by these Haitians. And they were almost going bankrupt. So they had to raise money. Now, when you study the Haitian Revolution, which starts in 1791, one of the things that these Africans did to defeat not just the French, but also the Spanish and the British, who were allies of the French, they reclaimed their African spirituality. They cast aside their white God, as one of my teachers, Professor Kabahai Watakamene, says in the documentary 1804. They reclaimed African spirituality. What was the African spirituality they reclaimed? Vodou. What do white people call Vodou? Voodoo. Oh, so you mean in the movie The Princess and the Frog that takes place in New Orleans, you mean the adversary, the black man, was made evil and he's a voodoo priest, which attacks African spirituality and demonizes the very thing that the Haitians used to overthrow their white oppressors? Is this what you're saying that's in the movie? Okay.
Well, see that, and see, look, I gotta stop you right there, bro, Mike. Just for the time, I want to make sure we get our next pause in. But that's part of the controversy that people have, and I'm pushing back on this a little bit. And you tell me, folks, as we take our next pause. Do we really expect Disney to be historically accurate?
I'm not talking about historically accurate,
and I'm not saying they should.
No, I'm not saying historically accurate.
I'm wondering. No. You made this point at the beginning of your remarks here. Disney is not just a movie making company. Disney is a cultural phenomenon. They shape the culture on how we see each other and how we see the world.
You're missing my point. I'm not talking about historical accuracy because these are fictitious movies. Disney does not have a problem showing a black female princess. They have a problem showing a black man as a prince or a king because they have a problem showing a black man in power, controlling natural resources, ruling over a nation. This is why they would show a black princess ending up with a white man or something that looks like a white man. This is programming. I hear you. I hear
you. Look, we got to take another pause. When we come forward, more conversation. I want to hear from you, crew. I know some of you have gone back into your childhood. Corinna, I see you. You went back to 5-year-old Corinna because of The Little Mermaid. And get your take on the movie that is shaping the culture, Little Mermaid. Folks, join us in the conversation and stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
We feel the hidden impacts of climate change that land harder in Black, brown, and Native communities.
Not many people talk about it because they clearly don't know our lives. But with President Biden's landmark infrastructure and climate plans, our issues are finally seen.
Removing lead pipes means we know our water is safe. Cutting carbon pollution helps our kids breathe easier. 1.5 million new jobs means stable work in communities. The impact we need.
Right now.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We got a few moments left, and I'm chatting it up with my brother Michael Imhotep from the African History Network, and you can check him out at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. But we've been talking about Little Mermaid. Let's bring Brother Michael back into it. I want to open up this conversation very quickly. Brother Michael, you brought up talking about the Princess and the Frog, talking about the actual history of our people as it relates to everything from quote unquote voodoo magic to our relationship, the relationship of Black women, in that case, Princess Tiana, and the lack of Black males in power.
Right.
Which I think is a valid
in this movie here. The Princess, we'll see the same thing in The Little Mermaid. This is not an attack on Halle Bailey. I want people to understand this. This is understanding white supremacy and racism and Disney that doesn't want to show a African prince, a Black prince, African American prince, things like this, but they will show an African American princess, or they will show the Little Mermaid, but she ends up with a white man. See, she don't end up with an African American man. That's problematic right there, especially when we take our daughters.
And it's crazy because the prince mother in the movie is a Black Caribbean woman.
Yeah.
But obviously
they don't have a problem depicting the women like that. They got a problem depicting the man, because then it's difficult to be what you don't see. So if little Black boys see images of a Black character like that ruling nations, controlling natural resources, controlling economies, then they think, oh, I can do that also. Oh, I can.
All right, so here's my take on that. Here's my take on it, and maybe I can hold this off. I want to hold this. I'm gonna speak. Let me speak to the man.
You can bring me back for another conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not talking. You can bring me back. Man.
I gotta bring you back. All right, look. Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, and I got a couple of minutes left, but my thinking is, this idea of Black boys being able to see themselves. This is 2023, y'all. 2023. You mean to tell me that Black boys aren't inspired in 2023?
I ain't saying they weren't inspired.
No, I'm not saying you. That's what you said. No. I'm just using that point that you're saying that Black boys can see that Black men have the ability to rule on all of those things.
We're talking about Disney movies. What Disney movie has a Black male lead like that?
No, you're right.
That's what I'm saying. So how is it you got two Disney movies? How's it you got two Disney movies with Black female leads like this, and they both end up with non-Black men? Then when we go look, and when Brandy plays Cinderella, okay,
right?
The prince was Latino. This is not against Latinos. It's like, wait a second. Disney has a problem with African American men.
Disney has a problem with race. I think we can kind of go on record to say that. But the thing is that a problem that we should have as a people and as a culture? Is that our problem?
Well, no, we need to understand it because
we don't see Black men in positions of power in the Disney film. Does that take away the innate power of who we are? No.
We need to understand that we're attacked, and one of the main ways that we're attacked is through media. So when
I get that part.
When you keep showing these images, and then the main Black female character ends up with a white man or a non-African American man, that's a problem there. And this is fair.
Here's the thing, though, bro, Michael. Here's the thing. You and I, and I'm saying specifically you and I, those of us who are at our age range, we didn't see Black people in none of these cartoons.
I agree.
We didn't see it growing up. I didn't see it. I grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the 90s. I didn't see it.
Right.
But guess what? It's crazy. It's really interesting that as much as I didn't see Black folks in the cartoons that I watched, I still came into an understanding of Black consciousness, right? Understanding of Black thought. And it's interesting. That was not shaped because of the cartoons. And I know it's become my personal background. I get that part. But I'm saying even brothers that may not have taken the same path or grew up in the same faith that I grew up in, they did not come. You know what? The big cultural influence was hip hop. It wasn't Disney. It wasn't what we seen on TV. It was
what happened to hip hop.
Hip
hop was co-opted by corporations that put out negative corporate controlled hip hop. Absolutely. Right. I remember I was watching it when it happened.
Right. We all seen it. We all seen it. Look,
Everybody hasn't seen it. Yeah, everybody don't
I
remember.
gotta bring you on, man. I gotta bring you back.
Yeah.
I gotta bring you back. All right, real quick, Brother Michael, how can people touch base with you, get all the information?
Visit my website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. Sunday, June was it June 4th? We have another class, Black Resistance Movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, the Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. Visit my website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, Sunday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can register there. We're updating the website. And then on Sunday, June 10th, I will be doing a free lecture, Saturday, June 10th, a free lecture, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, dealing with the evidence that the ancient Egyptians were Black Africans. Evidence that the ancient Egyptians were Black Africans. This is at our online school, but visit our website, register there. That's Saturday, June 10th. You can register for my other classes also, and email me through the website. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization for Juneteenth, the information I have on Juneteenth will blow you away.
Yeah.
Okay?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So,
I got to bring you back. I'll bring you back, Brother Michael. We're going to talk more about this. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a conversation with my sister talking about, do we overemphasize representation? Do we overemphasize being inspired? That's one of the conversations I do want to have tomorrow. Folks, Brother Michael and Hotep, my brother, definitely check him out on his website and listen to his show. He's rocking in Detroit on Sunday nights as well. So, Brother Michael, thank you so much for being with us on the call.
Roger. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. So much news, so many different things and nuances to this conversation. We're going to continue to have these discussions, but at least you got a little taste of where we start in the discussion. All right, folks, make sure you do your due diligence. So make sure you follow us on our platforms for Black Star Network. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Make sure that you do your due diligence to support us financially and continue to get this momentum around this digital movement, this digital space that we have created. Continue to let your family and friends know that we need to be supported, because every dime, every tweet, every share, every download matters for us. So make sure y'all check us out at blackstarnetwork.com, and also follow us on social media. And of course, follow me on social media. I'm looking for all of my Facebook friends to follow me on my IG. So follow me at The Real Farajii on IG. And of course, follow me at Farajii Muhammad on Facebook and Twitter at Farajii. All right, that's going to do it for us. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow for another exciting set of conversations right here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.